The intense pressure that must be mounting on the Director General, Tim Davie, this intersection, this controversy about politics, media, ethics, and public accountability, following the two damaging rows, the Gaza, the documentary in Gaza featuring the son of a Hamas official, and the broadcast of the Glastonbury performance in which a band led chants of death to the IDF. At the heart of this storm stands Lisa Nandy, the UK Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. And Lisa Nandy is a Labour MP for Wigan since 2010, known for her forthright style, northern roots. She's served in several shadow cabinet roles, including shadow foreign secretary before becoming culture secretary in Keir Starmer's government in 2024. She represents Labour's effort to appear rooted in the real concerns of towns like hers: disinvestment, community decay, cultural pride. And in office, she has also taken responsibility for one of Britain's thorniest institutions, the BBC. And earlier this year, the BBC aired Gaza: How to Survive in a War Zone, and the film was presented as an intimate portrait of life for children in Gaza under bombardment, but it emerged that its 13-year-old narrator was the son of a Hamas minister. This was, to say the least, an extraordinary failure of editorial due diligence, and BBC bosses quickly apologised, admitting serious flaws and removing the programme from iPlayer. So the approach under Tim Davie is to just remove the problem, just push it under the carpet, get rid of it. An internal review, still unpublished as of now, is examining how this happened and whether anyone should face disciplinary action. Lisa Nandy is furious because it hasn't stopped. The IDF chant is the next in the line, and she's demanded to know why nobody has been fired, and she's quite right to demand that. She's described herself as exasperated with the BBC's slow response and made clear the public trust requires accountability. I put in a complaint to the BBC, 4 or 5 months ago? More, maybe. Nothing happened. And as if that row were not enough, the BBC compounded its crisis by broadcasting live the punk rap duo Bob Vylan at Glastonbury, and during their set they led chants of death to the IDF, a shocking spectacle for a publicly funded broadcaster with obligations to impartiality and decency to air. Again, the BBC apologised after the fact, describing the chanting as offensive and deplorable, but it was too late. Let's not put it on iPlayer. That was the approach. Nandy has lambasted the BBC management for failing to stop the broadcast in real time. She said the BBC leadership must get a grip, describing anger not only on behalf of viewers, but especially the Jewish community, who she says deserved much better. The Jewish community is frightened in Britain because you've got people on the one hand like Diane Abbott, who doesn't seem to be able to tell the difference between being Jewish and being in the Israeli cabinet, and you've got people on the other hand, who are singing chants which are genocidal. And then you've got people promoting. It's like Tevye, isn't it, in Fiddler on the Roof? On the one hand, on the other hand, on the other hand, you've got people promoting Hamas, a terrorist organisation. Yes, we should have sympathy, and serious sympathy for the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank. We should be excoriating with our condemnation and our rebuke to Netanyahu and his thuggish government. But we should be absolutely supportive of the Jewish community in Britain, and we should equally be supportive of the principle that the State of Israel has a right to exist, as indeed does the Palestinian state. These scandals have put the Director General, Tim Davie, under immense pressure. Davie has had to manage the BBC through a period of savage budget cuts, culture warfare, and existential crises posed by streaming. And critics say these episodes show a culture of weakness at the top, a reluctance to act decisively in the face of anti-Semitism and extremist language. And there are calls, of course, for his resignation. But defenders argue he's actually done more than any predecessor to confront allegations of anti-Israel bias at the BBC. They point to the complexity of broadcasting from war zones, the editorial independence of production companies, and the enormous challenge of policing live music content without falling into censorship. This is fundamentally a question about the BBC's role. Is it rigorous? Is it impartial enough? Is it actually serving its job as a public service broadcaster? Or is it so afraid of accusations of bias that it ends up paralyzed? And what is it doing to help put out the message to the people across Russia that there is an alternative to Putin's vile propaganda? It's doing nothing there. It's been accused at various times of both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and it's perhaps a mark of the bitterness of the Israel-Palestine debate that both charges stick. And the problem for the BBC is that as the license fee declines and streaming services grow, it must justify its unique role. And the spectacle of a Gaza propaganda platform or chants calling for death damages that case immeasurably. So you may ask, where do I stand? Well, I think Lisa Nandy is right to demand accountability. The Hamas Boy documentary is a case study in catastrophic editorial failure, and the Bob Villain episode shows an unacceptable laxity in live broadcast management. But I don't think that Tim Davie necessarily should resign. Do I think he will resign? Yes. But I don't think he necessarily should. But I think he should have taken more decisive action than the action he's taken. The BBC is too important to be reduced to a revolving door of sacrificial leaders. Davie has had he's been a serious steward of its finances and mission in a difficult time. Instead, he must urgently overhaul editorial processes, appoint strong journalistic deputies with the authority to prevent these disasters, and above all, the BBC must learn to distinguish fear of bias accusations from genuine editorial standards. And I think the BBC needs to make a decision that it's actually going to be biased. Here's a programme that is biased in favour of this. Here's a programme that's biased in favour of that. To hell with this idea about being everything has to be bland and fair. No, actually, everything should provoke discussion. The job of a public service broadcast is to provoke discussion and to promote thought. Part of the BBC's remit is education, and that means discussion. And it must be brave enough to report the truth, including the ugly realities of Hamas, Israeli policy, and the suffering of civilians without becoming a megaphone for either side. That, after all, is what public broadcasting means, and it needs to stop being so arrogant about its fact-checking and all this rubbish. It needs to start actually doing the job rather than protecting its own backside.